Hello and welcome to Business Lessons from the Military. I'm your host, Kevin Bemmel, and we're here every Tuesday at 10 a.m. Pacific time to talk about military history, doctrine, and the practices of great military leaders and distill from them lessons we can use in our businesses. So today, I was kind of struggling for what I wanted to talk about on today's show. And when I was planning shows last week, and all of a sudden it dawned on me, one of my favorite subjects is dogs. Now, I know some of you out there do not like dogs. One of my longest standing and closest friends does not like dogs, but I think most of us like dogs. And even if you don't, hopefully you can appreciate what dogs essentially bring to the table. So I did some research, and I found three notable dog. I'm sure there's more, but I identified three notable dogs in military history that I want to tell you about. And there's some, I think, outstanding lessons we can learn from these animals about potentially having dogs on our team in the workplace. So for those of you who have ever been on a walk with me, yeah, if I walk by someone and a dog, looks at me, will, I will usually ask the owner, "May I pet your dog?" And so, I don't have a dog of my own right now. My dog, my Jiggers, died in 2012. I haven't had a dog of my own since then. And I used, for a short time, I brought Jiggers into the workplace when I was a Navy chaplain, and I will tell you that it did work the way I'm going to talk about today. So I'll save those lessons for you. Unfortunately, at that time, the colonel in charge of headquarters and service battalion in Okinawa detested dogs. And so through somebody else, he told me I couldn't bring my dog to see the young Marines when I did the in-dock brief. But short-sightedness on his part, I would argue, but it is what it is. So, like I said, I'm going to tell you about the history of three dogs: Stubby, Chips, and Cairo. So if you saw my social media posts, you saw those names, and inexplicably tied to team up with dogs. So let's start with Stubby. Stubby was actually given the rank of sergeant. He's the only dog ever given a rank through combat in military history. So he was promoted to the rank of sergeant. I think he was originally a private. So he was probably a Boston Terrier mix. Now, if you know anything about dogs, terriers tend to be very, very smart. Oftentimes, mixed breed dogs are smarter than pure breeds, although not always. And he served in the U.S. Army during World War I. So if you've watched any of the previous episodes, I've done a number of shows highlighting different aspects of World War I, General Pershing, different battles, Meuse-Argonne, etc. So Stubby was a stray found by a fellow named Private J. Robert Conroy at Yale University. Now, this may sound a little bit strange, but in World War I, a large number of young men from the elite American universities enlisted as soldiers in World War I, not necessarily as officers, by the way. In fact, there's a wonderful book, the Millionaire Flying Boys or something like that, and it's about one of these wealthy young men from an elite university who started a group who learned how to fly here in the United States and then went over to Europe in World War I, and they flew combat missions in World War I, but they paid for their own training in order to be able to do that. It was a very, very patriotic thing to do. So Private Conroy actually smuggled Stubby onto the ship that was taking him and his unit to France, and he became the mascot of the 102nd Infantry Regiment. Stubby participated in 17 battles on the Western Front, and primarily, as you might imagine, dogs have a keen sense of smell, excuse me, hearing, and it made him an excellent scout. So among the things that Stubby was able to do was, because of his sense of smell, he could tell when a gas attack was coming toward his human colleagues and give them a warning before they would even sense that it was there, allowing them to put their gas masks on ahead of time and not be nearly as impeded or heavily impacted by a gas attack. Another thing he did was he located wounded soldiers, and provided them with comfort, while they were in the battlefield, until they could be brought back to friendly lines and given medical treatment. He also captured a German spy, if you can imagine. And he evidently attacked this German that was somehow spying on the American lines. He grabbed onto his pants and held him until the American soldiers arrived. And after the war, Stubby survived the war, and he came back to America. He was a national hero. He participated in parades. He met presidents, and he received medals for his service. So, and his remains are displayed at the Smithsonian National Museum of American History. So, you can go to the Smithsonian in Washington, D.C., and see Stubby's remains. So what an amazing animal, right? The next dog I'm going to tell you about is Chips. Now, Chips was a German Shepherd Collie Siberian Husky mix, right? And again, we're seeing a mixed breed, oftentimes more intelligent than a purebred. He served in the United States Army during World War II. And he was one of the most decorated war dogs of World War II. He served with the 3rd Infantry Division. He was trained as a sentry dog, and he participated in the invasions of Sicily, Italy, France, and Germany, right? So all of those amphibious invasions, those, with the exception of North Africa, those were essentially all of the invasions that occurred during World War II. So during the invasion of Sicily in 1943, Chips and his handler were pinned down by a machine gun nest, and Chips broke free of his handler. He attacked the enemy soldiers and forced them to surrender. Can you imagine German Shepherds? They're big dogs. German Shepherd Collie Siberian Husky must have been a very formidable looking dog, right? It attacks these soldiers with the machine gun. He even grabbed one of the soldiers by the throat, right? And this allowed the U.S. soldiers to capture this machine gun nest. So for his bravery, get this, Chips was awarded the Distinguished Service Cross, the Silver Star. Those are, medals for or personal decorations for heroism, and the Purple Heart, which is a decoration you get for being wounded in combat. Now, unfortunately, later, the medals were revoked. There was a regulation about giving military medals to animals, but nonetheless, it gives you an idea of the esteem with which the 3rd Infantry Division held Chips, and what he did in terms of saving lives of his fellow soldiers, right? He also, by the way, he saved his unit during a nighttime ambush by detecting enemy forces before they could attack, probably heard them, right, sneaking up or whatever, and was able to alert the soldiers he was with. So, again, an amazing animal, but by no means the only dog who was with the troops in World War II. But Chips is an outstanding example of how dogs helped soldiers in combat during the Second World War. The third dog I'm going to talk to you about is Cairo. Cairo, kind of near and dear to my heart, because Cairo was a Navy SEAL dog. And for those of you who know a little about my career, I was my last reserve duty billet was as command chaplain of a SEAL team. So to know these people who work in the Navy special warfare community, special operations community, is really something. And it's as you might imagine, it's a very difficult environment, and especially at this time, the SEALs were being called upon to do a huge number of missions, far more than they had before, and doing missions that normally would have been assigned to just regular troops, but the president at that time wanted to keep a low profile on combat actions, something that frankly did not ingratiate him to the SEAL community, because they were so overworked, and their families as well did not particularly appreciate it either. Cairo was a Belgian Malinois. I'm not exactly sure what that is, except for I'm pretty sure it's a pretty big dog, and he served with SEAL Team 6. So I want to show you a video of one of the things that Cairo could do. So Cairo could parachute, and he could do what's called fast roping out of a helicopter. So I'm going to show, this is just a really short video, but this is not Cairo, but this is a video of a soldier and his dog. This is a U.S. SEAL team fast. Check this out. There's the dog. He's got his goggles on, and you can see he's got his collar. And I don't know why he's checking his teeth, but he is. So the SEAL loads him into the helicopter, and they're harnessed together. Either you see there's a rig on the end, there's the rope, okay, and watch that. There's the dog, and the SEAL. That's fast, right? It's a very rapid way of exiting from the helicopter. He catches himself, and there's a from the landing zone. This is attached to that. Okay, now I'm going to hold it there while the helicopter pretty amazing. Okay, so I mean, it's really kind of mind blowing. I mean, for a human being to do that is pretty mind blowing, but for a dog to do it. So, Cairo is most famous for participating in Operation Neptune Spear, which was the Navy SEAL raid in 2011 that led to the killing of Osama bin Laden. And if you were around in 2011, you probably remember what a monumental event that was, because Osama bin Laden had planned the 9/11 2001 attacks here in the United States. So many Americans really felt a sense of victory after the SEALs took out bin Laden, and with the help of Cairo. So Cairo was equipped with a special canine tactical vest. It was fitted out with cameras, and this would enable real-time surveillance without the SEALs, being in danger doing the surveillance themselves. So they could check out the layout and see what was the safest way to approach, a situation, not just the Bin Laden compound, but just in general. That was the work that Cairo did, and he was on many dangerous missions during his time with SEAL Team 6, and I believe he lived through it and retired. And I think he was adopted by a SEAL veteran, after his time in the military was done. So just again, just an amazing things that these dogs did. So I want to talk. I want to now take some time and translate into civilian, business, and professional reasons why we might want to have dogs on our teams. Now, before I do that, I'm going to talk about just some considerations about bringing dogs into the workplace. Obviously, nothing we do is completely, at least potentially, problem free. So, having said that, I'm going to talk just about three things to consider before you would make a decision to bring animals into the workplace. I will say that in one of the projects that I work on, we do have, well, we not so much anymore because we found homes for them because we're going to be moving the office, but we had cats in our office. The former owner of the business, who passed away, just loved cats, and so we kept a number of cats there for a while we found them other homes. And it was kind of fun. These little, I mean, they were small and very sort of agile. They'd run around, and they were quite delightful to watch. I'm not a particular cat lover, although I did have a cat for many years, Lily, that I dearly loved. I honestly prefer dogs, but these cats were quite charming. I'm not aware of there being military cats, though, which is why this show is on military dogs. So, three things to think about. The first one is allergies and fears, i.e., that some of the people in your workplace could have negative reactions. One, that they not really able to control allergies, right? If they're allergic to dogs, that can be problematic. Now, there are dogs that are essentially hypoallergenic, or I should say dog breeds. And so it may be that if you do have someone in your office who's allergic, but you get a hypoallergenic breed, so then maybe that would eliminate that hurdle to having a dog in your workplace. Obviously, you're going to want to talk with someone who knows dogs and dog breeds and dogs in the workplace. Someone who knows those well. You're probably not going to just want to go to the pound and just pick out any dog, but get some advice. By the way, I'm not saying you shouldn't get a dog from the pound. I think that would be great if you did, but you're going to want to get advice as to which dog to pick that would be appropriate for the situation at your organization. Now, some people are afraid of dogs. Sometimes those fears have a rational basis, i.e., they were attacked by a dog. Other times they're somewhat irrational, but that is something I think you're going to want to take into account. I know when I was a Boy Scout, we were doing a newspaper drive, and I walked up to a house, and all of a sudden this dog jumped out at me, and it grabbed me in the groin, scared the heck out of me. And one of the adult leaders saw what happened, and he, pulled the dog off. And I was shaken up, but the leader explained to me that the dog was probably trained to protect the house and protect the inhabitants of the house. And they had left the newspapers out because they knew we were doing this paper drive, and I should have been more careful in approaching the house. And so that made sense to me. I was, whatever I was, 11, 12 years old, something like that. Okay. So for me, it didn't cause any lasting fear of dogs, but I could see where it might. I know my daughter got nipped by a dog, and that has, I don't want to say it's made her permanently afraid of dogs, but it's made her skittish about dogs ever since. She was a very, very young child when that happened, unfortunately. Okay, so that's one thing to consider. Another is just pet behavior. So you know, to have a dog in the workplace can be a great thing, but it can be disruptive, especially if the dog is ill behaved. And so if it's barking, running around a lot, chasing things and all of that, it could make it very, very difficult for the office to be productive. So you're going to want to get a dog that's calm, well trained, and not disruptive. And by the way, it may mean trying out a few dogs to find one that is compatible with your workplace. Okay. Even the size of a dog can be problematic. I know when I was married, my daughter's mother loves dogs more than I do, and she loved to adopt dogs that needed a home in order to prevent them from being put down. And I came home one day, I think this is when I was stationed up at Point Magoo. And I walk into our dining room, and there's a dog resting his head on the dining room table. This huge dog, and I mean, we had a nice house at the time, but I mean, it was not a big house. The dog was just too big. Anytime he would move, he was knocking into stuff, and so I asked her to find another home for the dog as quickly as possible. My daughter was petrified of this big huge dog. So and by the way, the dog was not he was not a barker. He was not he did not jump or anything. He was just big, and he was just too big for the size home we had, really. I think he was a Great Dane mix or something like that. I mean, he was a beautiful dog, by the way. So you want to make sure the dog's behavior will be compatible with your workplace. Now, if you have a very active workplace, then maybe the dog running around is a good thing, right? So it just depends on what goes on in your organization. And the third one is safety and cleanliness. So the environment needs to be safe for dogs. I badly wanted to bring my dog Jiggers when I went on deployment on the USS Ronald Reagan. The problem is twofold. One is an aircraft carrier is really not a safe environment for a dog. Aside from all the dangers from aircraft and all of that, there's just plain falling off the ship. I mean, if he had fallen off the ship, he almost surely would have drowned. Now, I would have dove in after him, and then we would have drowned together, and that would have been horrible. Having said that, I think that if there were a way for Jiggers to have been on the ship safely, he could have done a tremendous amount of good on that ship. But if you have the kind of work environment where, for example, there's a lot of toxic chemicals, so that may be problematic having a dog around because they could, get poisoned by the chemicals. But so that's a thing to consider. And then cleanliness on the part of the dog, right? Where is the dog going to do its business? I mean, you don't want the dog urinating or pooping, in the workplace. That's pretty disgusting, right? So is there a dog run where he can go do his business or whatever? Or, is there going to be a schedule for people to take him for walks outside or whatever? So all of that needs to be worked out. So that, and obviously the dog needs to be house trained, office trained, I guess we would call it in this case, or workplace trained, right? So I think those are the things we want to think about before we would bring a dog onto our team. But so I want to wrap up by talking about translating, like I said, the stories of Stubby, Sergeant Stubby, Chips, and Cairo into reasons why it might be a good idea to bring a dog into the workplace and make him a part of our team. So first of all, there's loyalty and team spirit. So Stubby was very loyal and dedicated to his unit. He protected them from gas attacks. He caught a German spy, and there was a sense of bonding around this mascot that the 102nd Infantry Regiment had. And dogs can serve the same function in the workplace, so they can promote team spirit in the workplace. They can create an environment where people come together, play with the dog. The dog can inspire some collaboration. So all of those can be one of the advantages or all of those are an advantage of having a dog in the workplace, similar to having, Sergeant Stubby, the mascot of an Army regiment. The next is stress relief and emotional support. So, Cairo, the Navy SEAL dog, Sergeant Stubby also provided comfort and emotional support for wounded soldiers. So he would go out and I'd find a wounded soldier, and he would stay with them until that soldier was brought back. But more broadly, Cairo did that for his SEAL colleagues who are in an incredibly stressful environment, almost always behind enemy lines of some sort, being inserted into a very dangerous situation, having to be extracted. And so having the dog there supported the SEAL Team 6 emotionally and helped them regulate the stress that they were facing. Likewise, a dog in the workplace. This is one of the areas where a dog in the workplace can be most effective. And by the way, this is where Jiggers was so effective when I used to bring him to the in-doc talk that I had to do each week when I was in Okinawa. So for those of you who don't know what that is, so when the Marines, almost all of them young, would first get to Okinawa, we had a series of indoctrination lectures, and they were just introducing them to how things worked in Okinawa. So I was there to explain to them the chaplain services that were available to them. So they had flown in from the United States the night before. It's a long flight from Pendleton all the way to Okinawa. They're groggy. They're jet lagged. I mean, they're really disoriented, right? And they're feeling pretty stressed to be in this new environment. And so I would bring Jiggers along. He was a little Jack Russell Terrier. He had an energy about him, but he wasn't real jumpy like a lot of Jack Russell Terriers. And he would just kind of walk among the young Marines, and kind of he would. It was uncanny. He would, I think, find a particularly stressed young Marine and just kind of stop there. And after usually just a few seconds to a minute, the Marine would start petting him, and you could see not only that Marine relax, but all the Marines around him, and they just loved this little dog being there. It was kind of like, I think for many of them, this is kind of like a little bit of home in their kind of confusion and disorientation. So this idea of stress relief and emotional support, I can tell you from my own experience, it absolutely works. And it's something that can happen in the workplace as well. If you have a very high stress workplace, one of the best things to consider is having a dog there, because dogs absolutely can help reduce stress and provide emotional support. So another thing that dogs promote is resilience and adaptability. And really, all of the dogs, that's one of the things that they were able to do for their units, is help them figure out what do we need to do in order to make this successful. So, again, with Cairo, right, with his cameras on, and even though I'm sure they had a plan for Operation Neptune Spear, I suspect that once they were on the ground, closing in on bin Laden's compound, and they had Cairo out there with his tactical vest on with the cameras, able to observe firsthand what was going on, they were able to adapt their plan to better ensure that it would be successful. Likewise with Chips. So in the World War II dog, right? A lot of what he did was scouting and helping his unit know what to do going forward. So that was that's integral into his purpose as a sentry dog, as a scout dog, and same with Sergeant Stubby as well. He was a scout dog as well. So they provide an ability for their units to be more adaptable and therefore be more resilient. And the same thing can be true in your workplace. Now, this is somewhat related to what I was talking about before in terms of dealing with stress and emotional resilience. But to have a dog there that can help calm people down. Once people calm down, they will have better access to their resources, which will help them be more resilient, help them be more adaptable. So again, especially if you're in a very high pressure work environment, having a dog there can help your people retain their focus or regain their focus, which will help them more readily adapt to whatever a crisis is and respond to that crisis in a more I can't think of the word, but in a better way, in a more resourceful way. Okay, another thing these military dogs did is they boosted morale and built trust. Now, in Stubby's case, he was the mascot for the 102nd Infantry Regiment, and so he really was part of boosting their morale. His duties went beyond the battlefield. He went to all of their social events and all that kind of stuff. And I mean, look, if you've ever been like on a picnic with the dog and you're playing with the dog with the frisbee, or you're just playing catch with the dog, it really makes the event more fun, which in the end boosts morale. And so having a dog in the workplace can do the same thing. Generally speaking, dogs are, even if they're not crazy, running around kind of dogs, they have kind of an inherent enthusiasm to them, and they can transfer that enthusiasm to your team, right? And that is one of the great things about dogs. And so they can boost morale. They can also help build trust among your team members. So if someone from the team is feeling perhaps alienated for some reason, the dog can help bring them back into the team by bringing the people together to maybe pet the dog, walk the dog, talk about the dog, take care of him, and that can sort of bring that person back in and see that everybody has a common goal. Okay, so boosting morale and building trust is another aspect of that how dogs can enhance your workplace. Finally, dogs can encourage physical activity. Now all of the dogs, Sergeant Stubby, Chips, Cairo, for the most part, they were, with their handlers, keeping them moving. But by nature, combat is a physically active thing. But in the workplace, dogs I think, are even more effective at that, especially if you have an office workplace where people are fairly sedentary. So having a dog that, for example, needs to go out for walks. So, people who want to get out for 15-20 minutes walking the workplace dog, that gives them a reason to get up from their desk, get up from their chair, get outside for a few minutes, get some sunshine, which helps develop vitamin D. All of that is very useful for our well-being, but just getting out and moving is great. Now, those of you, I think you can tell, I stand up when I do my broadcasts. So I have a stand-up desk. I have a sit-down desk right behind me. I don't use it a whole lot. I tend to actually stand too much. I really should stand for about 50 minutes and then sit down for 10, because sometimes I start getting a backache from standing all day. But I like to be up and moving. You can see when I do my shows, I'm moving around, and if I had a dog. So when I had my dog Jiggers, when I was in business before I joined the Navy, um, I didn't have a backyard. So my wife at that time and I lived in a two-story townhouse, and we didn't have a dedicated backyard. And so I used to have to take Jiggers for walks a few times a day, and so he would hang out in the office with me while I worked. And then, usually every couple of hours, we'd go out for a walk. Sometimes it was to go to the mailbox place where I had my mail sent. Other times it was just to take him out for a walk to get some exercise for the two of us, or because, he had to, do his business, as we say. So all of that, again, I've had experience with that, having a dog. Now, I work from my home, so you can say, well, okay, your dog was at home. He wasn't in your workplace, but my home was my workplace. And Jiggers kept me moving throughout the day, and that's the same thing that a dog can do in your workplace. So there are other lessons. I think those are the key ones, the key takeaways to how having a dog can enhance your workplace. And a workplace dog, okay, maybe they're not going to do something as amazing as what Sergeant Stubby did in capturing a German spy, or um, or searching out the enemy like Chips did, or surveilling, bin Laden's compound the way Cairo did. Okay, those are amazing things. Of course, military dogs, very highly trained. They are tremendous assets to the military. But we can still bring, keeping in mind the issues I mentioned, allergies and fears. What were the other two? I went up on them. Allergies and fears. Oh, okay, yeah. Pet behavior, and then a safe and clean environment, right? So taking those three things into account in terms of making sure we're doing our homework before we bring a dog onto our team. Dogs can really enhance our productivity, the morale, the physical activity and well-being of our team members. And so I encourage you to, if you are a dog lover, and especially if a lot of the members of your team are also dog lovers, maybe give it some consideration, or maybe just have a day once a month or once a week when people can bring their pets to work within, certain constraints about how the dog has to behave, and safety and that sort of thing. Obviously, you're going to want to talk to your insurance agent before you do that. Make sure that, God forbid, if something bad happens, you're covered. So those are that's the lessons we can learn from Sergeant Stubby, Chips, and Cairo. I hope you enjoyed hearing about these heroic dogs, and thinking about what they can teach us for how we can enhance the work environment for our team. So team up with dogs, right? That's the message for today. So thank you very much for joining me today. Tomorrow at 10 a.m. Pacific time is my show, People Making Money. My guest is David Daly. He's a Marine Corps veteran and drone pilot. And as I call the episode, he's flying with his feet on the ground. He's built a business as a drone pilot. I think you will really enjoy hearing how David built his business, as well as some of his military background. So please do consider joining us tomorrow, Wednesday at 10 a.m. And then on Thursday is my every other week show dedicated to Jiggers' Place. This is an opportunity, as the week is coming to a close, for us to relax and talk about things not related to business and professional matters. So we'll have a cocktail. I'll be making something called the Divine Logic Cocktail. Okay, I think you'll find it interesting. If you want the recipe, by the way, just subscribe to my email list. Go to my website, bemmel.com, scroll all the way to the bottom. You'll see, you just fill in your email address and click subscribe, I think it is. And then you'll get an email a couple of hours before each show, just letting you know the show is starting, and the recipe for the cocktail will be there, and you can make one along with me. And we're going to be talking about the existential question: reason versus logic. Okay, and people have argued about this question for millennia, and we're going to delve into it and see what can we make of this thing about faith versus reason. Did I see reason versus logic? That's no. Faith versus reason, right? Is it logical to have faith? If you're faithful, does it mean you can't use reason and logic? What is the conflict there? Why have people debated this for so long? So that's what we're going to talk about. And then next week, on Monday at 10 a.m. is my show. Normally it's my show, Trust and Estates Weekly. Next Monday, though, will be Columbus Day. And so I will be doing a special show honoring Columbus Day. So hopefully you'll tune in for that. That's at 10 a.m. Pacific time Monday. So once again, thank you so much for joining me. Always a pleasure to have you. Any questions, comments, thoughts, feel free to drop them into social media. All the links will be in the show notes after this episode posts on YouTube. You can also email me. My email address is in the show notes as well. Always love to hear your comments. And by the way, if you're not a subscriber to my YouTube channel, please do consider subscribing. That way you'll never miss an episode of the Way to Wow shows. I am thinking about adding a 5th show. I'm just started giving it some thought, so stay tuned. Maybe there'll be a 5th one on the way. So wishing you a wonderful rest of the day, and signing off as I always do. Marie, darling, you are my belle, especially since you were such a dog.